3 o'clock, let's get going. So welcome to MQA, The Truth Lies Somewhere in the Middle, the final hour of the show. So thanks for coming, everybody. So before we start, I thought I'd lighten up the mood a little bit. In lighter news for what's going on, so hopefully some of you get the humor. Joke. And this is a kind of a contentious topic, so I like to use a quote from, one of my favorite people, Sergeant Hulka. And we need to remember nobody's saving babies in hi-fi and nobody's killing puppies. So, just so we set the tone. So what this seminar is, it's a consumer-centric presentation of facts and findings. So on Computer Audiophile, we have a real consumer-centric bent. We don't look at ourselves as ministers of information. We look at what's best for the consumer is best for hi-fi and best for everybody. Because without consumers, this industry really isn't here. So that's kind of the angle that we take on everything. What this seminar isn't, it is not a deep technical exploration or takedown of MQA. I would probably fall asleep after the first minute, and most of the people here probably would. Some of you would understand it much more than I, but just so we know, we're not going to dive really deep into this, because that's not my specialty and it's kind of boring to me. So, a couple of questions, kind of rhetorical. How do we get from this to that? So how do we go from straight wire with gain to lossy audio origami? For the longest time, it's always straight wire with gain is what I want in my audio system. And how do we go from high resolution 24192 plus to 13-bit MQA CDs? And how do we go from noise is the enemy to added noise that was not present in the recording studio? And how do we go from a free, flexible, and open format to a costly, restrictive, and proprietary format? Here's one of the ways we get there. Through the traditional hi-fi press. Nothing against them. I'm using their own words here. Better than high resolution. MQA revolutionizes digital audio. And what's behind this WTF moment? Let the revolution begin. So that's kind of how we get to, we don't need straight wire with gain. We don't need 24192. Noise, that's okay. Free, flexible, and open, we're willing to sacrifice. So that's one side of the continuum. Like all topics in life, there's a continuum from it's the greatest thing ever to it's the worst thing ever. So let's take a look at the other side. So, as some of you may know, on Computer Audiophile, we have some people who aren't fans of MQA. So things like this get them excited, and MQA losing money is a great day for them. So that's obviously the two bookends of this continuum. And while the numbers here may be true, the truth about this whole thing is somewhere in the middle. MQA is not this evil empire, but I also don't believe it's the second coming of high resolution, the birth of new digital. It's somewhere in the middle. So I like to present people with information because that's what I like. So if you have more information, it just allows you to make choices. And whether after this you like MQA more or less, that's totally up to you. I may give an opinion at the end. I can't remember if it's in my slides, but I'm trying to present information. So let's go over some of the MQA claims. And I got these from the MQA website. And a lot of these claims have been discussed ad nauseum online, but I get that most of you probably have real lives and don't read everything in the forums. So I thought, let's just go over some of these and give people information with which to make decisions. So, MQA, developed from extensive research in audio and neuroscience. Sounds excellent, I'm in. Extensive research in audio, yes. Extensive research in neuroscience? Sure, just not human neuroscience. The neuroscience claims discussed in the AES paper were mostly tested with barn owls and mice. 1 paper out of 7 papers cited addresses human hearing. Okay? Differences in hearing between the animals and humans, yes, I'm sure there are some, but just laying out some facts. MQA is lossless. So I got that logo from MQA, and MQA is not lossless. The MQA process discards bits that cannot be recovered. So it's not an archival format. The record labels will never take an MQA file, album, and say, this is our crown jewel. Because some things are thrown out that can never be, you can never get them back. So whether or not that's a big deal, whether the gains of what we throw out and what we get are better, so who cares? That's not up to me. So yes, once a lossless file is converted, it can never be converted back. Parts of MQA are lossless, but the whole thing is not lossless in the traditional sense that has always been used in audio. And again, that logo is straight from MQA. So MQA sets a new standard with maximum sound quality. And here's some other quotes I got directly from MQA. MQA sets the new standard for maximum sound quality. MQA authentically reproduces the sound of the studio master. Because MQA delivers the sound of the original performance, artists will be requesting it. MQA authentication. MQA guarantees delivery of the studio sound. I love it. I'm all in. But by definition, 99% of the recordings available in MQA can't be the sound of the studio because the MQA process changes the sound after the fact. So I don't know if anybody saw out on Computer Audiophile, I kind of got into a fight with mastering engineer Brian Lucy. It didn't end well, but one of his points was the MQA recordings, or the MQA albums released of the masters he created, he had no idea. He was not involved in the process. So think about it. There's an artist performance. It's recorded, it's mixed, it's mastered for a very specific sound. They work months on these things in the studio. The album is released, and now, decades, years later, there's an MQA process that changes that sound. Whether it's better or worse or the same, well, it can't be the same, it's changed. Whether it's better or worse is totally beside the point. It's different. It is not the sound of the studio. It is not what was produced and agreed upon by everybody involved in creating that piece of art. So, it's a fact. In limited circumstances, yes, everyone can be involved in the MQA process, but the reality for the vast majority is much different. So yes, there are albums out there, I'm assuming from start to finish, MQA. Excellent. So the sound of the studio, again, if you take a look at these, and this comes from an incredible article that Archimago produced for Computer Audiophile. He is an incredibly smart person. There are people that are so much smarter than I am who are writing about this. And so if we want the sound of the studio, we should reproduce exactly what was in the studio and nothing more. And if you look here, everything to the right of that dip is not in the original recording. So whether or not that's the sound of the studio, I'll let you decide.
Hey, Chris?
Yes?
Real quick question.
Oh yeah, this is Ken Forsyth from MQA, and he's one of the first guys I said, hey, this is what we're doing. Please show up.
Hey, thanks for everybody for coming. Nice to see the room almost full. Who is Archimigo and what's his credentials?
So, I know who he is, and
Please, you're obviously quoting him as an authority.
I am quoting him as an authority. I am also quoting Mans Rolgaard as an authority. There are several people who are authorities, and I don't feel the need to go into their credentials right now during the presentation.
Well, I think that's a double standard. Everybody here understands Bob Short's credentials, or I think they do.
Yes.
I think in transparency and fairness, we should tell us who he is and what he does.
Okay, so here's how I work.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Here's how I work. This can be reproduced by anyone with the requisite skills. So no matter the credentials of the person who reproduced this,
Cool. I'd just like to know who he is and what his credentials are for producing this. It would just be interesting to know if this is a competitor looking to come up with something smarter, cleverer than what we have, or is this an individual, or is this just somebody clever with Photoshop? It's just a realistic question.
it's a very realistic question,
Thank you.
and I will tell you, it is not a competitor. It is not somebody clever with Photoshop.
Can you please just tell us who it is?
No. I know who it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. I don't want to say who it is because he's told me I don't want people to know who I am.
Well, I think that's incredibly unfair that you're challenging MQA and years of engineering, years of contribution to digital, and you're allowing him to hide behind a character. But it's cool if that's kind of where you are. That's cool.
Totally fine. Totally fine. And excuse me. So I think I'm going to touch on what you're going to touch on. This was given to Bob Stewart and MQA. I asked, please write something about this. Please refute this. This has been out there for anybody to refute on Earth. So whether or not
And
this
Chris,
person,
what was Bob's response to you?
Bob wanted a phone call with me.
No, Bob sent you an email stating that on your site, you don't allow people to be anonymous if they're in the industry. Why wouldn't you just tell us who it is? We'd love to engage with him if we know who it is, and we'd be very transparent with him.
Okay,
But I
so
think
here's,
this is a huge double standard.
Understood. Call it a double standard. I'm totally fine with that. I'm totally fine.
Okay, cool. And
The
you're a
reason-
moderator, so continue to moderate.
The reason that I allow somebody not to put their name behind this is because it's reproducible by anyone on Earth with the skills to do it. So if this is wrong, I have said to anybody out there, please show me how it's wrong, and I will happily make you the MQA hero. We will publish this front page. This is how it's wrong, everybody. The detractors have been wrong. Not that it's not possible to say it's wrong. Nobody has come forth, and I've asked for that, so that's where we'll come back to you.
So nobody's refuted.
We'll come back to questions, okay? Let's just run through this. We'll get.
In the middle of a pretty critical debate on this subject. So nobody's refuted it, but has anybody else supported it?
Okay,
That's the obvious
Okay.
question.
okay.
I accept that nobody's refuted it. Has anybody else reproduced what he's reproduced? And I'm still going to ask you the same question again. Why won't you release his name?
Because the same with any newspaper, if they have a source that gives them information, they say, we won't release your name. So if I come out with his name, I'm never going to get anything again from
So why
anybody who
don't you
doesn't
just
want
say
their
it's an
name.
anonymous source?
It's anonymous to a lot of people. It's not anonymous to me. It's not anonymous to other
Yeah,
writers.
but why don't you just call it what it is then? It's an anonymous source.
It's not anonymous to me.
Archimino, who has some high credentials. It's an anonymous source. Just be transparent. We've been totally transparent with the market. Our story hasn't changed. We
Yes,
stand
your
behind
story has
everything.
changed, Ken.
We-
Is
we stand
MQA
behind-
lossless?
We stand behind everything we've said.
No, you don't. You've changed your story.
Okay.
You started with MQA as lossless. When you got busted, you now remove that, you scraped your website of that. So let's stick to the facts.
Okay, let's stick to the facts. Tell us who he is. Hang on.
Why don't you ask him? He can get on his website and send him an email, ask him.
This thing is so easily reproducible. Why doesn't somebody reproduce it?
Okay, so that is why I published this. So the one of Bruno Mars, that is from Archimago. The one in the upper left is from somebody completely different on YouTube. They were listening to Beyonce saying, wait a minute, why is there a big dip? And then they started looking into it. So that's from somebody else. So yes, this is reproducible by anybody. It has been reproduced. This is not made up.
The thing is, I was reading that shows up on some recordings and doesn't on other recordings for some reason.
Okay?
And
It's the internet. I'm sure you read it. I have no idea. Okay. Yes. So let's move on. The sound of this
Can I
video.
jump in on this? Because so far, and Chris, I think it's become very clear, you're not really interested in being transparent about the conversation. You're putting your own opinion on here. I'm Mike Jabbar, I'm the CEO of MQA.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for coming, Mike.
March of 2016, You were given an exhaustive description of every one of the topics that you've already misrepresented on your slides, including, it was well before that the MQA lost us. That's not even an MQA logo any longer. That is gone.
Any longer, it was, correct?
Years ago. We're talking about March of 16.
Absolutely.
Where you were told how all three elements of the MQA technology work. There's only one component of it that is lossless.
Correct,
Right?
absolutely.
I'm glad that you've been reading what Bob's been sending you, but you don't appear to want to present it in these kind of forums. So it's really kind of a sham, because we've documented what we do in MQA for a long time. If people want to present us with questions or concerns, anytime we see a test, we ask for the test parameters. We don't seem to have people that want to be transparent with us about how they created results, not unlike what you're presenting today. Right? So it's one thing to want to have an open, healthy conversation about what MQA is trying to do, which is actually try to further the convenience and the quality combination so that more consumers can enjoy a higher quality sound experience. But this kind of platform where you're actually trying to represent an objective end-to-end review of MQA and a spectrum is just a silly representation of your own opinions. So why aren't we showing Bob's answers to each one of those points on your slides? Why wouldn't you do that?
Okay, we have an hour here, Mike.
So you've chosen to spend that hour on things that are a little bit more provocative rather than fact-based.
So I will give anybody a whole bunch of money if they can say this is not based on fact.
I'm not referring to this slide because this is just a symptom of the broader problem. Even your opening slide is if wire to a 13-bit representation on a CD.
Yes.
That's not a biased statement. In the document that you received from Bob in March of 16, it directly addresses the silly statements around 13 bits and 17 bits that were going around at that time in computer audiophile. Completely exhaustively describes that. And
Okay.
it provides our results as well.
So Bob is clearly on YouTube stating MQA, not CD, is between 15 and 17 bits. Are you saying he's lying there?
Do you understand the context of those statements, what he's talking about, in terms of MQA CD?
Oh my God.
So that's a no.
This is
Take
not
that as a
going to
no.
be a discussion between me and you. I'm going to finish my slides.
I see, okay.
Okay. And if there's factual inaccuracies, please let me know.
You're choosing to
Okay.
omit the response from MQA on every one of these points.
Okay,
Which is a basis
so-
for it.
I'll briefly say that the responses that Bob has given, no industry expert has looked at those and said, those are honest and those answer the questions.
That's a biased statement. Yeah. And I'm a member of computer audit, but what you just said is a very biased statement. Because
Okay.
Bob is an industry expert, but I mean, you just can't.
Okay, so here's the deal. Go talk to engineers who work for these audio companies. Ask them. I don't know if they will tell you, but they're all, I won't go down that road. But okay, if it's biased, fine,
Chris,
that's fine.
Chris, I see where your opinions are. Yes, please, go talk to the engineers at DCS. Go talk to EMM Viking Labs. Go talk to the guys at Brinkman. All the guys that have exhaustively looked at MQA, seen that what we do is correct, the math is good. Talk to the labels and see what their findings are.
I cannot comment on that.
What DAC do you own, Chris?
I absolutely cannot comment on that.
What DAC do you own?
Let me continue the presentation,
Okay, great,
please.
thanks.
Okay, MQA is not seeking to take over the industry by eliminating all other formats. So I have to go on what I see. MQA says if you don't like it, don't buy it. MQA also sells this as it simplifies the workflow in one file that can fulfill all your delivery requirements. So I guess to me, that looks like we want MQA to be your one single file that everybody has. I don't know if this means they take the MQA file and then produce something else. I don't know.
And Chris, by the way, you mentioned Brian Lucy before, so it's probably okay for me to bring up that he is a mastering engineer. If it's one file, doesn't that take business away from Brian Lucy? So maybe that's a reason he doesn't like MQA. Part of his revenue stream as a mastering engineer is threatened by the process if it takes off.
Could be. Yeah, I don't know. I have no clue how that works.
Actually, that's a great point.
No idea. So
And does Brian own the content? Is he the content owner, or is he, I don't mean to diminish his role, but is he just a subcontractor?
Okay, so device fingerprinting, to remove issues with A to D converters. So this is cool. There's a very cool fairy tale story on the MQA website. This is actually very, very cool. A great story about the white glove process from MQA. The Telefunken MX, it was fingerprinted, MX80 was fingerprinted, anomalies removed in restoration. It's very cool, several pages long. I encourage everybody to go out there and read it. If you, like, when I first heard about MQA, this is the piece that really made me the most interested, was you can go back and remove things that were problems.
Doesn't that change the master address?
It absolutely, what, does it change the master? It definitely, I think it's cool, but it definitely is not the product that the band put out. So, I mean, facts, yes, it's changed, but I think this is cool. I think it's really cool. But then there is another note on this, that, so the original recording was 16-bit, 50.3497 kilohertz. MQA converted that to 24.192 and then folded it down to a lossy 24.48. That's how it's delivered. It's a very cool story how they figured out it was 50.3497 kilohertz.
I thought it was delivered as 1648.
Okay.
I don't know, I thought that's what they said, that way it's more easily streamed.
Okay, understood. So the fingerprinting thing, yes, it's great. I don't know how realistic it is. And when you look at the songs that are put together today, a lot of times are bits and pieces from different places, different times. Many tracks contain bits from MP3s or pieces pasted in from recordings using a multitude of different A to D converters. So that's kind of the other side of the continuum. There's the fairy tale recording of we're going in and we're going to take something that was not good and make it better. And the other side is, I guess, I don't know how you work, you fingerprint several A to Ds on a single recording. So just kind of both sides of that continuum. Studio master quality using no more bandwidth than a CD file, and high-res recordings delivered at 20% the size. So these are just a couple of things from MQA. Sound of the studio in a stream only 15% bigger than CD. Delivers studio master quality using no more bandwidth than a CD. And then there's the 20% again. So 15, 20%, or no more quality, or no more bandwidth. And so, let's see, size part 2. So MQA is larger than Redbook CD files. Can deliver, typically, this is a quote from Bob, 15.85 bits up to 17 bits, okay? Redbook CDs are 16 bits, 44.1. So, MQA may use less bandwidth than 24.192, but MQA isn't 24.192. If you take a non-MQA file and encode it at, say, 18 bits, which is more than MQA, and say 96 kilohertz, it's smaller than MQA. So to me, it appears that it's less efficient with compression.
This would be a perfect place, as an example, to include the section on this topic that Bob sent you in March of 16. It exhaustively describes this, and it shows how you cherry-pick certain things, and certain questions come in from your community members without context, and that's fine.
Thank you for chiming in.
That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't matter if it's 17 bits, if what the bits are you're throwing away because you're using the triangular encoding, you're really throwing away things that are inaudible anyway. So who gives a shit?
Okay.
Maybe your brain.
Yeah.
Okay, so size part 3. Do we need a lossy compression algorithm? So the next generation of cord cutting is here. It's not cutting from cable, it's completely cutting. 5G went live earlier this week. It's 300 megabits to 1 gigabit to people's homes for $50 to $75 a month unlimited, no data cap, no throttling. Yes, this is to people's homes. This isn't to people's mobile devices.
But where? Is it only gonna be in cities over 1 million people?
That would be a question to who's ever rolling it out. But so this, again, this is just to people's homes.
As a dealer that deals with networks every day, I'd like to tell you that probably 90% of our homes don't get over 10 gigs currently.
Over 10 gigs, yeah, that would be crazy.
If you live in Seattle, it's 10 gigs.
Okay,
Even though AT&T says they do 50 and Comcast can do 100, but most people don't even have these high bandwidth networks in their homes yet.
understood.
And this is a brand new, tiny rollout, a few hundred homes in 5 cities. This is the future, not the future.
So this is here now in a few cities, and so
So Chris,
they say by 2021, the number of 5G connections forecast 20 million to 100 million. Some estimates are much larger. I'm just saying, if this is the future, do we need a lossy compression algorithm right now? I don't know.
Isn't it also assuming like really perfect conditions? Let's say you're Tidal and Cobus and you're doing all this bandwidth at scale. I do big data for my day job. You really need, a lot of pipes, a lot of bandwidth. How do you know that at scale you don't need some kind of compression like MQA offers? Just because the fact that we can point to examples, for instance, that there's a lot of bandwidth to an individual house. That's not the same as looking at it from an enterprise viewpoint, like I do with my company, and like looking at something at scale. There still could be operational challenges where some kind of compression would provide value, I think.
Understood.
So Chris, I'm just gonna some real world info for this real quick. So I live in Atlanta, Georgia, not kind of a backwards southern city, but not a metropolis either. The average internet household speed in the state of Georgia is 11 megabits a second. If you're streaming 24/192 fat high res into a house, it's 6 megabits a second. So it means I can't be watching Netflix, my son can't be listening to high-res audio, and my wife can't be doing grades at the same time in our house, and we live in Atlanta.
Hey guys, this topic though about bandwidth is totally missing the point about why the music industry and all of the majors want a technology that lets them get a premium experience in the markets. So anybody that was around during the early days of digital and the download days, that iTunes file as an example was upgraded 3 times with no improved economics to artists. And so as Moore's Law allowed the services to be economically indifferent about giving you something better for equal cost, it priced down artists and their work every time that was done. So one of the reasons that the industry needs to be able to create a better experience even before everybody has big cheap pipes is because there has not been a story to the marketplace in a long time about the importance and value of music for mainstream consumers. And so I don't think anybody in this room denies that Moore's Law will continue to operate. Things will get faster and cheaper, and artists will make less money over time, and more of them will go pursue other careers as well, just because they won't be able to maintain the kind of living, frankly, that they should. And that's driving positive change in terms of the way that they do their deals with labels, but it's not changing the economics that they would enjoy because consumers are being taught music is less and less valuable over time. And I'm talking about mainstream consumers. Sometimes we all at this event are the big echo chamber, but we don't move the market at all. It's really
So,
Wrong.
So it's wrong that there's no digital retention? You don't know where I'm going with this, Ken. So, this one, there's an interesting presentation by
Have they ever
Christoph.
embedded DRM in a file? Is there a single example of where DRM has actually been embedded?
Just let me go here.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Lee. So no digital rights management. So this is where I'm not telling you yes, there's DRM in MQA. I'm not telling you that. There was an interesting presentation by I think it's Christoph
we can tell you there
Engman.
is none. So So let's just close it. What you're doing is, and you did this earlier as well, you go and look at all the patents that either Meridian or MQA or other companies hold, and your community makes presumptions about the application of those patents to our technology, which is absolutely
Mike,
false.
where have I mentioned those patents?
It's part of the conversation that's going on. Why would you put something up like that and say, I'm not suggesting that it's in it? It's not. We can tell you it's not.
Okay, so there's a presentation out there by Christoph Engman, you've probably seen it, that says, yes, this is a DRM, Trojan, or whatever. I'm not saying that that's right. So it's out there. People are looking at that going, oh, MQA is DRM. Bob says it's not DRM. So let's take a look at that. So MQA worked with you to make I'm not saying that's DRM, because Bob explained that one to me, and I don't think working with them to get cryptographic keys is DRM. Fine. But I'll say this, it appears, based on people pulling apart MQA, that they have the ability to do further, to restrict things. I will say that. That the ability is there, but how do I say this?
File also has the ability to carry any type of blockchain message that you want, and it's not being implemented right now either.
So this is kind of like, you know, the old Bill Clinton, what the meaning of is. So some people look at it and say, if I don't have full access to what I just bought without paying for more hardware, that's DRM. And other people say, if I can freely copy this from here to there, then there's no DRM. So this, is it DRM or not? Depends on what the meaning of is for everybody.
But honestly, if there's not a single example of MQA adding DRM, should we really obsess over this? Does it really matter? They're not doing it, the CEO says they're not doing it, Bob says they're not doing it, and there's no example that I've seen so far, maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't seen anything where DRM is being applied. That makes me, as a consumer, even someone who, granted, is very against DRM otherwise,
Yep.
that doesn't, you know, I don't lose any sleep over that. They started doing it, but I haven't seen an example yet, Chris.
I haven't either. But I'm saying, there's a presentation out there saying, yes, this is a Trojan sneaking in DRM. So
Chris,
that's what people are saying.
Chris, with all the feedback that you get, why don't you personally go to that presentation and say, there is no DRM, there won't be a DRM, this presentation is wrong. You are a big voice in this industry.
But
why don't you say,
because I can't say yes or no
yes, you can.
to any of
From
these.
these industry leaders, these guys are telling you here now, they're saying there won't be, and there's no example out there, so just say no.
Okay, I can't go to Christoph Engman and like say, no, there's no DRM. I don't know enough.
So you don't believe these guys?
No, that's one side of the continuum. MQA says there's no DRM. I haven't seen any DRM. But then it's, okay.
Well, you just said you can tell him that there is no DRM. So why not?
I can tell you, it depends on what the meaning of is, right? Some people look at it and say it's DRM if I can't play back this file 100% on anything. It's a loose term. It's a very loose term. Do you disagree?
Yeah, I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree with your position, not disagree with the
Okay, how would you define DRM, Derek?
You keep referring to that presentation, and you're saying that that presentation out there has got a point to make. Why don't you refute that presentation?
Because I can't. MQA refutes it by saying,
From the people here in this room telling you there is no DRM, there won't be any DRM, there's no examples of DRM.
Was Dolby B DRM?
Using your model, VHS.
You can play a Dolby B,
You're right.
a Dolby B recording at any device. You just want to get the noise, the quieter recording.
I hear you. I hear you. I totally hear you.
So vinyl is
No guarantee.
I totally get it.
Yes, but then
Well, no, yes, but
there's
there's no
something
guarantee
that
they
there's no
won't.
DRM and they put it on later.
Okay, so pros and cons. I look at this like we must consider the pros and cons and are who they're for or against. Must a pro for one entity be a con for someone else? Let's see. So this is fully opinion. Absolutely. It seems like the pros are for those collecting money, and the cons are for the consumers. Fully opinion, but
That's what Microsoft said.
I'm totally cool with somebody coming up with an awesome invention and making money off of it. I am not anti making money off your inventions.
That sentence, its pros are collecting money and cons are for the consumers, and you're not against it.
No, this seems like it. Let me continue. So, there's a ton of hardware turnover for manufacturers. Manufacturers benefit. The selling another version of the same music again, the record labels benefit. Better sounding music according to some, but at what cost? So, I talked to somebody last night, they were asking me what I'm going to talk about, and they're like, but, is some MQA recordings sound better? And I said, absolutely. I heard this Frank Sinatra, probably 2016 or 2015, and I've never heard anything better in my whole life. So, as a pro, yes, that sounds awesome. MQA can sound incredibly awesome.
Put that on your slide. Put that sentence on your slide. MQA can sound awesome.
Correct.
Then I'll applaud.
And then,
I'll applaud.
okay, and then I should also address the other side too. I will not address the other side of that.
Before you jump though, you have a point up there about reselling it again. Do you know what year it is and what the single biggest consumption channel is in the US? It's called streaming. It means you can actually update and upgrade that file as you find a better one, and the consumer actually doesn't have to pay again because it's covered by their subscription. So what is selling another version of same music yet again record labels? I mean, if we're talking about the community that's either buying vinyl, well, guess what? We're not releasing vinyl MQAs at this point.
That will happen, for sure will happen.
And if people are buying downloads, well, that's a market that MQA is involved in Japan, and that's a...
And MQA CDs, that's totally fine.
There's no US-based MQA CD store, or MQA download store.
You mean Onkayo is not US based?
What's that?
Onkayo is not US based?
Onkayo is not US-based.
Okay, so let's remember again, nobody's saving babies, nobody's killing puppies. Please have a sense of humor with the next slide. The next slide is fully opinion. I believe the use of facts are quite presidential. Conclusion. So this is an opinion as well. I believe the hi-fi industry gave credibility to MQA,
And the consumers.
and we no longer matter.
The hi-fi industry and consumers like me gave credibility to it. Add that to your slide.
Understood?
Thank you.
And apparently the record labels, because they're...
And then,
they're
and the
more
record
record
labels, there's a few others, and a lot of manufacturers.
And the entire independent label community. You missed the Merlin logo, which
Let's
also
finish
has
that
a-
sentence first.
which represents all independents.
So, I don't think anything here in hi-fi matters for MQA anymore. It's in the hands of these corporations. So, if Amazon tomorrow says we're going MQA, then we have it. So, parting note, it's a photo that Bob took of me at CES while I was listening to MQA, and I believe it was Natalie Merchant, and I absolutely loved it. Photo credit, Bob Stewart.
You know how to ruin Apple?
What?
Qualcomm gets a contract with MQA. It doesn't get,
Okay.
and it continues this lawsuit in Apple.
Okay, so that's it.
Good job, Chris.
I tried, people didn't like it, that's obvious. So be it.
Good job.
I tried.
It's a controversial subject. Good job.
So let's go to something less controversial, Brett Kavanaugh.
I'll get the first bit.
All right, I'm out.
No, I have the answer. It should not have been a confirmation.
We have time for questions or anything like that?
Sure, I don't think we need to ask questions. If people would like to make statements, that's fine, because I don't have answers.
He's got questions.
Yeah, no.
I mean, you can ask, I don't have an
have a
answer.
question to everyone here. Do you think that there is a need for a higher resolution streaming? Do you think that there is a need for a higher resolution streaming? I don't know if the word is service, device, whatever you want, so it's not straight MP3s. Yes or no? I just.
Yes. No. Yeah.
Define higher, 192?
Well, is this something that doesn't take away from the sound? The question before, well, so there's some, material being taken away. What does that do for us? And the real question is, it probably hasn't properly been researched in terms of what these frequencies are doing to our brain if we're trying to basically, maybe there's stuff going on in terms of the sound.
I do recordings. I disagree a little bit, with all due respect with the framing of your questions, because with training and encoding, first of all, if you recordings, you see that most recordings aren't utilizing the full 24 bits.
Right.
Most of them are well below 24 bits. The second thing is, I understand the technology, and Mike or Ken can correct me, there's really nothing being lost audibly. Sure, it might be fewer bits when measured in sort of a PCM paradigm, but with triangular coding, you're removing stuff that's not audible is the only thing that as I understand the technology works. If it's inaudible, do we care? At the end of the day?
But,
I
think we do.
What is the argument against that?
As an engineer myself, my question is, and I'm in a sort of a different category, because I wonder sometimes if the fact that just because we can't hear it, if it isn't somehow affecting us. This may be getting into the metaphysical level, and this may be getting into a level that we scientifically are not yet able to address.
That's a fair question. I'm not sure how we would create an experiment to discover the answer to it. That may be a
that is the basis for MQA's view on, even though people would like to argue about whether frequencies above 20K matter, it's absolutely the case with the research that we reference, which actually is animal testing, regardless of what Chris says, that shows we are incredibly sensitive down to the microsecond around the temporal information, and that ends up having a significant influence on how MQA captures audio and then ultimately represents it. The other part, I know we're kind of after hours here, the lossless thing really becomes...
You got more than 15 minutes left.
What's that?
You got more than 15 minutes.
Cool. The other part about just going back to lossless, and Lee, I didn't mean to cut you off on that.
No problem.
But you're on it, and that's why we think it's incredibly important to grab all of the original file, and the way that we actually use that information to create an MQA master as a little bit of the approach. We're not taking the traditional frequency is more important than timing information approach that most digital audio since the 50s has been focused on. The other thing I wanted to say though, lossless, this discussion of lossless, which is not only a concept of only from point A to point B in the digital domain, it also makes this flawed assumption that all A to Ds and D to As are entirely lossless in their process as well. And that misses what Bob said from the beginning, which is our charter is an analog to analog experience. End to end. End to end. And so when you look at the choices that we're making in the fingerprinting reference to the D to A, we have partners in this room who have implemented this and have really exposed out how they think about their D to As. It's because we're actually trying to understand what's happening there and then making sure that the audio file is prepared to have the best experience through that D to A. Because a lot of companies that are exhibited here differentiate themselves based on the sound of their hardware. And we want to be partners in the way that we have the MQA experience come through those D to As. But as a category, D to As are not lossless themselves, right? And that's the other flaw in the assumption that people get lost in here.
Can I ask something about the future vision? I think one of the concerns is going forward, say fast forward 5 years, will the availability of high resolution content, music, do the labels and the industry want that to be just MQA? Or will high res, if people for whatever reasons want to opt out of the ecosystem,
yes,
and stay with the current high res,
yes,
does the industry want to support both models?
I'll start with the label's relationship with MQA is not exclusive. So they have the ability to do high quality in whatever form they want, and we have to earn our position in each one of those services. It probably wouldn't surprise those in the room that each streaming service has its own point of view about what technology to use. And some might even want to do things that are unique or exclusive that other people wouldn't have access to. So I think we should all envision a large mainstream streaming world where there are many different approaches to making high-res audio available.
Yeah, because
I know that's a little broad, but I hope it answers specifically
a lot
what
of
you're
this is
asking.
driven by fear that I think may be unrealized or just unreasonable. I mean, if you remember the HD video world.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when HDMI first came out, when HDCE first came out, there was this hue and cry that they were going to take away our component inputs, all our devices are going to become obsolete.
Yes.
That never happened. I mean, it happened after everybody's, you know, component video devices were.
Nobody cared.
Yeah.
It became cheap,
So
cheaper, cheaper,
I
so
think
just
I think a lot of this fear is being driven by this somehow that I won't have access to the thing I like right now, and I'm going to be forced to go to.
Not only is that not the case because of the relationships that we put in place with the labels, but if you go a little bit further and look at history, that's not even a good business model for MQA, because if we get established as the standard and have rights bodies that are driving what people have to adopt, that's actually only going to take the commercial part of our business south. And if you look at any technology that's gone into that kind of a standards body, it means we don't have, and I'm the CEO, my job is to deliver value to my shareholders. That's not a great economic model for us. So ubiquity is, I wouldn't say the opposite, because we certainly want people to look at MQA end-to-end as a superior experience, but being everywhere is not necessarily in our best interest.
No.
And thank you, because one of the reasons, frankly, as much as it is kind of fun to talk about who we are as a company in this setting, it's really interesting for me to hear what people are saying about MQA so I can be smarter about how we communicate, right? We're not trying, I mean, anybody in this room knows Bob or has ever spent 5 minutes. To think that there's a forum that's questioning that guy's integrity is disgusting, right? To think there's a forum that attacks him personally is not just libelous and ugly in its worst form, but something that we need to speak out against because it represents the culture of our company and misrepresents who that guy is as an individual. But no, we're not looking to lock anybody up. People don't have exclusive deals. Labels are not obligated. It's a very open community. We do have a technology that's proprietary because of a lot of work, including decades of leadership around losses. Keep in mind, Bob and Peter were launching NLP 10 years before anybody could spell FLAC, right? So there's a unique expertise in this team about what everybody in this conference cares about. And yet somehow, because it moves some people's cheese around, he's the bad guy now, which is nonsense.
The thing I think is really interesting too is the guy who did this chose to run out of the room when we were going to discuss it. I mean, why is Chris not here when the discussion is going on?
There's a lot of reasons for that. Panic is one. It's really difficult to stand up in front of a group like this and represent yourself.
Well,
I
think he doesn't want
He
to.
should have stayed, but I can understand there's a lot of psychological reasons not to, not factual reasons.
And I think it's tough for anybody in his position to moderate his community the way that he might even want to. Some people have taken stronger positions. Some people will kind of clean up the kind of nonsense that goes on there time to time better. I don't sit in his seat every day, so I don't know what the incoming is. And
I mean, you have a situation where in this, you can't tell what's science fiction and what's science.
Yeah, the stuff that crosses the line, I think, for all of us is when it gets personal, and there's no place for that.
And to Chris's credit, he's been moderating a little bit more than, it was the wild, wild west. Anything went for many, many pages that unfortunately I was, on and involved in. And I kind of said, this is a waste of bandwidth because there's no honest debate going on. And Chris has gotten better recently about doing some moderation, but it's still pretty fast and loose, and there's a lot of personal
There are
attacks.
comments about Bob's family from September of this year.
That's
disgusting.
Yeah, that's out of.
There've been
bounds.
comments on that.
He has a button that he could use if
There's
he
been
wanted to.
comments on
clean
that
up,
thread,
right?
you know, because you've read them, that people have said they want the title to fail because they supported MQA. That's why I lost it today, and that's why I lost it with Chris last night in the bar. And it took me 2 pints to do it.
I'm sorry, I missed that, by the way.
That's the side of that thread, which is, and I've read that thread, I'm aware of that thread, and that's the side of that thread that's wrong, and Chris has done his best to moderate it, all credit to convenience. And they have got some incredible technical expertise on there. Nothing I can ever challenge it, you guys can, and I'm sure you have, and some of the notes you've sent, I couldn't challenge it. But it got so personal to me, because I want title to fail because it supported MQA. It was written down. I won't name the person that wrote it, but I know you know who it is.
Yeah.
And it was just like, that's wrong. I'm a consumer of that product, and I
Well, there have
love
been
it.
instances of certain user, of one case where a user went after a EMF and tried to get him
Yes.
fired for spending time trying to have an honest debate
Right.
on computer audiophile.
Right.
That's way out of control.
Absolutely, I remember now.
I wish this talk had been what he opened up and said it's not gonna be, a description of what is MQA, why is it superior? And from what I've read, you guys are doing like incremental sampling as you get higher in frequency, so you still maintain the integrity of the audio stream, but not wasting so many bits in the lower range. It could be well above the Nyquist limit in the bass region, so you're not worried about capturing those bits.
I would be happy to circulate to everybody the stuff that we published that Bob's written on exactly what's happening in there. Just, even 2 hours is not enough time to do it justice, but I think
You know, there's a,
It's a hell of a-
I'm sorry, Mike, if I could just interject here. There's a very well done, wish I'd written it, actually, a very well done sound on sound article that talks about the triangular coding. And if you actually, I had to read it twice, you know, I'm good at math, that's my day job, but it took me a couple of times to really get what was going on. If you read that article, it's very plain English. I forget who the author is. That's a very good starting point. If I could try and track it down. So they're having some plain English things, and Bob's got
They are
papers.
plain English, some of them are just long reads,
Yeah.
because there's a lot to be said on the topic.
I mean, I would love it if we can get effectively the same quality as 9624 and consume less bandwidth of storage space. But if there's shortcuts being taken that being detrimental to the music, then that's a different story. My understanding is that it's got some good science to it.
It does.